Bodhisattvas Everywhere, Walking the Path of Compassion in Modern Professions by the Backyard Buddhist. In the classical Mahayana traditions of Asia, the Bodhisattva is the one who vows to awaken, not merely for personal peace, and not merely for private liberation, but for the sake of all beings. The Bodhisattva says, in effect, I will not turn away from suffering. I will not seek my own freedom while forgetting the pain of the world. I will walk this path of wisdom and compassion, not for myself alone, but so that all beings may be free. Now, for many of us in the Western world, that word bodhisattva can sound distant. It can sound exotic. It can sound like something that belongs in ancient sutras and temple art, in the stories of monks and sages and saints from another time and another culture. But I don't think the bodhisattva is locked away in scripture. I don't think the bodhisattva belongs only to incense smoke, monastery walls, or beautiful statues on altars. I think bodhisattvas are everywhere. The bodhisattva is the family doctor who refuses to rush a patient who needs just a little more time. The bodhisattva is the therapist who sits steady while someone finally speaks a trauma they can barely name. The bodhisattva is the caseworker who makes phone call after phone call because one family is depending on them. The bodhisattva is the firefighter who runs toward what everyone else is running away from. The bodhisattva is the nurse who stays gentle after a 12-hour shift. The bodhisattva is the teacher who still sees promise in the child everyone else has given up on. And sometimes the bodhisattva is simply the friend who answers a late-night text with, "I'm here." The bodhisattva ideal is present wherever human beings choose compassion over indifference. And that means the bodhisattva path is not as far away from us as we might imagine. It may be as close as the next person in front of us. Bodhisattvas in modern professions. Across the modern Western world, countless people embody this ancient vow to lessen suffering. Some do it consciously. Some would never use Buddhist language at all. Some may have no religious framework whatsoever. And yet, when they choose mercy, patience, courage, and presence, they are walking the bodhisattva path, whether they know the word or not. Because the heart of the bodhisattva way is not a label. It is not a costume. It is not an identity we put on. It is a response to suffering. A response that says, I will not look away. I will do what I can. I will meet this being with compassion. Doctors and healers, think of the physician who understands that a human being is more than a chart, more than symptoms, more than blood pressure numbers, lab results, medications, and insurance codes. A good doctor knows that every body carries a story. Pain has a story. Illness has a story. Fear has a story. And healing, when it is real, has to make room for the whole person. A physician once said something that has stayed with me. Every person has a whole story behind their symptoms. If I don't honor that, I'm not truly healing them. That, to me, sounds very much like the bodhisattva of healing. In Mahayana Buddhism, we find the figure of Bodhisattvas, the medicine Buddha, the Buddha of healing, whose vow is to relieve suffering and bring beings toward wholeness. Now, a Western doctor doesn't need to know the name Bodhisattvas. A nurse doesn't need to call herself a bodhisattva. A physical therapist, hospice worker, or home health aide doesn't need Buddhist vocabulary. But when they relieve suffering with humility, patience, and care, they are participating in something sacred. The Dalai Lama has often said, "My religion is kindness." That's a simple sentence, almost too simple. But the more we practice, the more we realize that kindness is not sentimental. Kindness is demanding. Kindness requires attention. Kindness requires patience. Kindness requires the willingness to see the person in front of us as a whole human being. And when healing professionals do that, they become living expressions of compassion. Counselors and therapists and counselors often sit closer to human pain than almost anyone else. They sit with grief, they sit with rage, they sit with shame, they sit with trauma, they sit with confusion, addiction, despair, and fear. And much of the time, their work is not to fix everything immediately. Their work is to remain present, to listen without flinching, to create a space where the person suffering can finally breathe. In meditation practice, we often hear the instruction to observe, accept, and let go. That sounds simple when we say it, but anyone who has sat on the cushion for more than a few minutes knows that observing is not always easy. Accepting is not always easy. Letting go is not always easy. And yet, this is exactly the ground therapists help people discover. They help people turn toward what hurts without being destroyed by it. They help people name what has been hidden. They help people sit with the storm until the storm is no longer the whole sky. There's a Zen story about a master who listened silently as a student poured out his sorrow. The student spoke for a long time. The master did not interrupt. He did not rush to explain. He did not offer a clever phrase or a spiritual slogan. He simply stayed. After the student left, someone asked the master what he had taught, and the master said, "Sometimes the greatest compassion is simply not running away." That is the Bodhisattva's vow, not to run away, not from pain, not from tears, not from confusion, not from another person's suffering, and not from our own. Clergy and spiritual guides. Clergy and spiritual guides across many traditions often live near the borders of human life. Birth, marriage, illness, confession, crisis, death, grief. They are called when life becomes too large for ordinary speech. They are called when the diagnosis comes. They are called when the family is breaking apart. They are called when someone is dying. They are called when someone has no one else to call. A rural priest once described his work very simply: "I show up when life is falling apart." That may be one of the clearest descriptions of ministry I've ever heard, and honestly, it may also be one of the clearest descriptions of the Bodhisattva path. In Buddhism, Kannon, also known as Guanyin, Avalokiteshvara, or Chenrezig, is the Bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world. That phrase matters. Hears the cries of the world, not the polished prayers of the world, not the impressive spiritual language of the world. The cries, the sobs, the broken sentences, the silence after the bad news, the voice on the phone at midnight, the person who says, "I don't know if I can keep going." Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Compassion is a verb," and that is exactly right. Compassion is not merely a feeling. Compassion is not just a warm emotion we enjoy in private. Compassion moves. Compassion listens. Compassion answers the phone. Compassion sits at the bedside. Compassion performs the funeral when no one else is there. Compassion bears witness to what hurts. Whether one is Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, secular, or something else entirely, this kind of service echoes the Bodhisattva heart. It says, "I hear you. I see you. You are not alone." Social workers, first responders, and bodhisattvas in uniform. Now let's think of those who serve on the edges of society. Social workers, case managers, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, police officers who truly understand their work as protection and service, firefighters, rescue workers, shelter staff, addiction counselors, crisis line volunteers. These are professions where burnout can be severe. These are professions where the suffering is not theoretical. It has a face, it has a name, it has an address, it has children involved, it has sirens, paperwork, trauma, exhaustion, and sometimes danger. And yet, many people stay in these fields because something in them feels called to stand between harm and healing. Ajahn Chah, the great Thai forest master, once said, "If you let go a little, you will be a little happy. If you let go a lot, you will be a lot happy. If you let go completely, you will be free." Now, in these helping professions, people let go in very concrete ways. Social workers let go of comfort. EMTs let go of fear. Firefighters let go of safety. Crisis workers let go of convenience. Caregivers let go of sleep. And again, they step towards suffering rather than away from it. That doesn't mean they are perfect. It doesn't mean they never get tired, angry, overwhelmed, or discouraged. Of course they do. They are human beings. But the Bodhisattva path has never required us to be superhuman. It asks us to be willing, willing to show up, willing to care, willing to act, willing to begin again, ordinary people as bodhisattvas. And here is where I think this teaching becomes especially important. You do not need special training to walk the bodhisattva path. You do not need a robe. You do not need a title. You do not need ordination. You do not need to be recognized by an institution. You do not even need to think of yourself as spiritual. The mother holding a frightened child at 2 in the morning is practicing the bodhisattva way. The father working 2 jobs so his family can have stability is practicing the bodhisattva way. The teacher who gives extra time to a struggling student is practicing the bodhisattva way. The neighbor who checks on the elderly person living alone is practicing the bodhisattva way. The friend who listens without making the conversation about themselves is practicing the bodhisattva way. The recovering addict who reaches back to help someone newer on the path is practicing the Bodhisattva way. The person who chooses not to return cruelty for cruelty is practicing the Bodhisattva way. The person who apologizes first is practicing the Bodhisattva way. The person who feeds a stray animal, forgives an old wound, or sits quietly beside someone in grief is practicing the Bodhisattva way. None of this is small. We often imagine spiritual practice as something grand, something dramatic, something mystical. But most of the time, practice is very ordinary. It is the next breath, the next word, the next choice, the next person. Shunryu Suzuki Roshi captured this beautifully when he said, "You are perfect just as you are, and you could use a little improvement." That is such a wonderfully human teaching, because the Bodhisattva path does not begin after we become flawless. It begins right here, with our confusion, with our tiredness, with our wounds, with our contradictions, with our imperfect hearts. The Bodhisattva path belongs to ordinary people, and thank goodness for that, because ordinary people are the only kind of people there are. The broken teacup. There is a Zen teaching about a broken teacup. A monk accidentally shattered a cup and felt terrible shame. The master simply said, "The cup is already broken." At first, that may sound cold, but it isn't. It is a teaching about impermanence. Everything we love is fragile. Every body ages. Every relationship changes. Every plan can fall apart. Every cup is already broken. This does not mean we stop caring. Actually, it means we care more tenderly, because we know nothing is guaranteed. For caregivers, healers, teachers, and helpers, this is a vital teaching. We cannot control every outcome. We cannot save everyone from pain. We cannot fix the whole world through willpower. Imperfection is built into things, but compassion still matters. Presence still matters. Care still matters. Even when the cup breaks, especially when the cup breaks. The Buddha and the sick monk. There is a powerful story in the Pali Canon about the Buddha and a sick monk. The Buddha found a monk who had been neglected by the community. He was ill, he was dirty, he had been left alone, and the Buddha did not merely give a sermon about compassion. He did not delegate the work to someone else. He and Ananda washed the sick monk themselves. Then the Buddha told the monastics, "Whoever would tend to me should tend to the sick." That is one of the clearest teachings in all of Buddhism. Spiritual realization expresses itself through care, not through spiritual pride, not through lofty concepts, not through beautiful words alone. Through care, through washing the sick, through feeding the hungry, through sitting with the grieving, through helping the person in front of us. This is where the Bodhisattva path becomes real. Kuan Yin's 1,000 arms. There is also a beautiful legend about Kuan Yin. In one version of the story, Kuan Yin hears the cries of suffering beings and tries to help them all. But the suffering is too much. The cries are too many. The need is overwhelming, and she shatters. Then Amitabha Buddha reassembles her with 1,000 arms so she can reach out in every direction and help more beings. Now, we could misunderstand this story. We might think it means we are supposed to become superhuman. We might think it means compassion requires us to destroy ourselves. But I don't think that's the point. The teaching is not, do everything alone. The teaching is, compassion expands when it is shared. No one person can hold all the suffering of the world. No doctor can heal everyone. No therapist can carry every wound. No teacher can reach every child. No monk, priest, minister, or rabbi can answer every cry. No parent can be perfect. No friend can be everything to everyone. But together, we become the 1,000 arms of compassion. One person brings food, one person makes the call, one person sits at the bedside, one person teaches, one person drives, one person listens, one person prays, one person repairs the car, one person opens the door, one person says, "You are not alone." And suddenly, compassion has many hands. Why the Bodhisattva ideal matters today. I believe the Bodhisattva ideal matters deeply in our time, because our world is full of anxiety, full of loneliness, full of burnout, full of distraction, full of people who feel unseen, unheard, and disposable. We are connected by technology, but many people are starving for presence. We have more information than ever, but not always more wisdom. We have more ways to speak, but not always more willingness to listen. The Bodhisattva path offers another way: compassion as a daily practice, presence as a source of strength, service as a path to awakening, wisdom as an antidote to despair, a universal ethic that can transcend religious identity. The Bodhisattva teaches us that ordinary work can become holy work when it is done with compassion. Not holy in the sense of being separate from life, holy in the sense of being deeply, completely, lovingly involved in life. A hospital room can become a temple, a classroom can become a temple, a fire station can become a temple, a kitchen table can become a temple, a counseling office can become a temple, a phone call at midnight can become a temple. Wherever suffering is met with compassion, the Bodhisattva is present. A Bodhisattva vow for modern life. So perhaps we need a Bodhisattva vow for modern life, something simple, something we can carry into the workplace, the family, the grocery store, the traffic jam, the hospital room, the classroom, and the difficult conversation. Maybe something like this: beings are numberless. I vow to meet the next one with compassion. Suffering is endless. I vow to ease what I can right now. The path is long. I vow to keep walking. Awakening is subtle. I vow to return to this moment. That may be enough, not because it solves everything, but because it brings us back to what is real: this person, this moment, this breath, this suffering, this chance to help. Conclusion. The Bodhisattva is not merely an exotic spiritual figure from a distant culture. The Bodhisattva is not trapped in ancient texts. The Bodhisattva is not hiding somewhere behind temple doors. The Bodhisattva is your coworker, your neighbor, your therapist, your nurse, your teacher, your doctor, your friend, your spouse, your parent, your child. And sometimes on your better days, the Bodhisattva is you. Not because you are perfect, not because you have transcended human weakness, not because you always know what to do, but because in a moment when indifference was possible, you chose compassion. In a moment when you could have turned away, you stayed. In a moment when someone was suffering, you answered. Every person who stands in the breach, who listens, who serves, who protects, who heals, who teaches, who comforts, who chooses compassion in the face of suffering, that person lives the Bodhisattva vow, whether they know the word or not. And maybe that is the great secret of the path. Bodhisattvas are everywhere. We only have to learn how to see them. And then little by little, we have to learn how to become one.